Story 1. Tell my grandmother not to ignore her cough and to go to the doctor. It was lung cancer. She died yesterday, and the grief is overwhelming. Story 2. I think about this every day. Why can't I just be the main protagonist, get hit by a van going too fast in a bad anime, and redo my life? Story 3. Being parachuted into this point in 2015 would allow me to fix so much. Abort all plans to get my teaching degree. I don't know what I was thinking. Commit myself more to the job I had at the time. Ask my friend at work out. He's asked you twice. Don't let it fade out because life isn't a movie. When you reconnect years later, it's going to be too complicated. Maybe you'd be celebrating your 10th anniversary by now, or maybe it would go nowhere even then, but at least you won't have to live with the regret. Maintain the friendships I made in the previous year. Don't run back to your fractured high school friend group. You can't fix it. Stop isolating yourself in general. Spend time with your grandparents. They still have years to go, but you're going to lose the last two to the pandemic, and you'll wish it was Christmas 2019 for the rest of your life. Also, Grammy is slowly developing dementia but is very good at hiding it, and Grampy won't seek help until it's very bad because it ramped up during the pandemic. He didn't want to worry his children, so try to get her assistance early. Lose weight. Get your health under control early. Get treatment for your polycystic ovary syndrome. It's still possible, but breaking bad habits is harder the longer they've gone on. Don't stop writing. Tell your parents to just enjoy the new stage of life they're in and stop trying to make the bad decisions they'll make in a few years. 10. Enjoy the world before COVID-19 because it's never going to be the same. Presumably, I can't do anything about the fact that it's going to happen, but knowing it would make me live differently in advance. And as everyone has said, buy Bitcoin. Story 4. I was 20 years old at the time and had a huge crush on a girl. I was completely obsessed with her, but I had no idea how to talk to girls. If I woke up and it was 10 years earlier, I probably would have asked her out. There was a good chance she would have rejected me. And when that happened, I think the first thing that would come to mind would be, wow, I can't believe I spent all this time obsessing over a girl who didn't even like me back. Seeing my mom, dad, and sister all looking younger and healthier would be surprising at first, but I would eventually get used to it. Seeing my old cat who died in 2019 would also be surprising. I would probably call my grandma because she was still alive during that time. Story 5. I received a prescription for sleep apnea treatment. Then I invested all my money in Nvidia or Bitcoin. These two investments should set me up nicely. Story 6. 20 years ago would have been better for me. 10 years ago, I had already set up this life. I would want even 25 to 30 years. Life would be sweet. Story 7. Pull my kids out of youth sports. The money, time, and energy wasted on tournaments and travel teams were significant, only to abandon it all once high school ended. I should have insisted on recreational leagues for a more enjoyable experience. I need to keep an eye on my daughter during puberty so we can address her attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as soon as it manifests, rather than struggling for 2 years until we figure it out. I should stop trying to humor an employee I worked to salvage for years. Once she left, everything improved. I can't control other people or their beliefs regarding what I say, so I need to let go of the idea of warning others about COVID-19. Story 8. I would transfer to another university closer to home, seek help instead of being stubborn, and hopefully prepare better for my future. Story 9. The first thing I would change is ensuring I do not miss out on a decade of new music. It is time to binge all the albums I have been neglecting. Story 10. I could say many things about investing or inventing something that made billions, but the real answer is that I'd forgive people more than they deserve. I'd be more outspoken about my boundaries and expectations instead of being passive-aggressive and angry at others when they fail to reciprocate unstated desires. I've lost many good friends in the past 10 years because I was either too stubborn or expected them to read my mind. Money would be nice, but I'd rather have my friends back. Story 11. Do I wake up in my own bed at my mom's house or in my own bed with the previous owner? Story 12. Going straight to get diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder allowed me to save my degree, a lot of money, and my mental health. Story 13. I am planning to take control of my life by learning more languages, saving money for a driver's license and travel, and exploring side projects. Additionally, I want to be more direct with my crushes. Even though some experiences might not be ideal, I believe they are essential for meeting new people. I also intend to familiarize myself with certain artists before they become popular. Story 14. Stop talking to the angry narcissist I wasted half a decade of my life with. Get my mother to have a liver transplant so she doesn't die. Invest in cryptocurrency so I could be retired by now. Story 15. I get to do my 30s all over again, get married and have my babies again, but this time knowing I need anxiety medication. Having already undergone the therapy I so desperately needed is perfect. The first thing I would do is get on my medication and actually enjoy that precious time in my life. Story 16. Apparently, no one else here has children under 10, as this situation turns into a horrific nightmare. Story 17. I would create this Reddit community. Then I would ban this question because it gets asked every day. Story 18. I had a different bed 10 years ago. I need to get my rare medical condition treated as soon as possible. Otherwise, to be real, nothing major will change. Story 19. I'm buying a lot of Dogecoin and I'm waiting until the day before Elon appears on Saturday Night Live to sell it for around 70 cents per coin. Oh, and I will probably get some Bitcoin as well. Story 20. Oh God. That means I get a chance to move my home and business before the volcano erupts and ruins my life. Sign me up. Time Machine Person. Story 21. I would examine how it happened so I can replicate it if the next 10 years do not go as planned. This reminds me of the book Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Story 22. Do not date the person who traumatized and abused me. He damaged my mental health, and I have never fully recovered. Story 23. Listen, I know I said yesterday that Bitcoin is just a giant scam, but trust me, we need to take a second or third mortgage on the house and buy as much as we possibly can. Story 24. But investing in stocks or Bitcoin can help make money. I would know who the love of my life is and what I need to change to keep her. And then I would be happy. I'm sorry, but I can't change the rest of the world. No one would listen. Story 25. Well, it would already be too late to save my dad, because he died 15 years ago. My mom would still be alive, but there wouldn't be anything I could do to prevent her death, so I would just spend even more time with her until the inevitable happens again. The one thing I could do is save my relationship with my ex-boyfriend. I would just make him stay home on that one night he messed up. Nothing else would need to change, just that one night. Story 26. My husband is still alive. I immediately urged him to get an MRI with contrast for the cancer that I know could eventually affect him. I continue to insist on having one every 6 months until any signs of cancer appear, at which point he will need immediate treatment. The same applies to my mother, who has lung cancer. Story 27. I would persistently communicate with my family doctor until he listens, so I can start my treatment 6 years earlier and live a normal life. Story 28. Doing the things I wanted to do and spending more time with my relatives. I genuinely wouldn't change much. I'll just try to enjoy it more. Story 29. I imagine everything is different since I lived in another place and my children were much younger. The people who live in my current house are likely unhappy to find their furniture gone and us living here. Story 30. I visit my doctor to obtain medication for anxiety and depression, making both of our lives significantly easier. Story 31. I might feel overwhelmed and emotional because I am 6 months away from meeting my wife, and I know I cannot expect to have perfect knowledge of the future. I also have several cancer surgeries coming up, which I regret. I am fine now, but the year 2015 held a unique energy for me. Then there are topics like Bitcoin and Nvidia. Story 32. Spend more time with my dad. He died unexpectedly 3 weeks ago, and we held his funeral yesterday. I want to bring our family closer together. As my dad and little brother have had a rough patch over the years, I will work on being more engaged in my relationship. Story 33. Call my mom and tell her that when her doctor diagnoses her with a bladder infection, she should request that he tests her for cancer. It was cancer, and she passed away a year later after a brave fight. Story 34. I just lost two family members this year, both in their 30s, to preventable causes. I would probably have a chat with both of them. On a lighter note, I would have bought our first home before 2021 and saved a significant amount of money. Story 35. Sell everything. Follow a diet of ramen and water. Limit purchases to the bare minimum. Direct all resources to buying Bitcoin. Set a calendar reminder to sell Bitcoin on January 27, 2025. Also, sell the car and buy a hybrid. Or, instead of Bitcoin, consider investing in Nvidia. I'm too tired to calculate right now. Story 36. Invest in Bitcoin, bet on the Super Bowl and similar activities. Then use every penny of it to prevent certain individuals from winning in 2016. Story 37. I would delete her number. I would know how it is going to work out, and there is no way I would put myself through that again. She would be confused and heartbroken, but not nearly as much as I was. Story 38. Well, I didn't live here 10 years ago, so I would quickly try to escape the random stranger's bed I just woke up in. Story 39. I would invest in stocks, purchase a significant amount of Bitcoin, skip getting a PlayStation 4, and prioritize my mental health. Story 40. I ended things with the person I was with 10 years ago. Although I learned a lot and grew during that time, and after we ended, it still had an impact. Story 41. Landing in the middle of university, with no recollection of the material needed for the exams since it's been 10 years since I studied, I think I would drop out, take a credit, and engage in investment opportunities like many of the other comments suggest. Story 42. Make a few smart investments and try to prevent the bad things that happen to people close to me. Avoid dating certain individuals, seek out new relationships sooner, and steer clear of the mistakes I made with my last ex. Switch degree paths and colleges sooner to save money. Advise a friend not to drive on a specific day. Inform Ukraine of the exact location of the Russian invasion. Notify the United States government of the location and date of every major crime I remember, including details about notable figures. Advise George Lucas not to sell Star Wars to Disney. Work to prevent major cyber attacks from occurring. Advocate for saving Harambe. Alert the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention about COVID-19 in advance. Encourage my grandmother and uncle to get cancer screenings. Adopt a healthier diet based on my current understanding of nutrition. Warn people in Miami about the high-rise collapse. Lobby the United States government to preserve the USS Enterprise and USS John F. Kennedy as museum exhibits instead of scrapping them. Raise awareness sooner about microplastics and cooking oils. Warn BioWare about their ongoing mistakes in game development. Alert Samsung regarding issues with the Note 8. Advise the United States government about Huawei earlier. Encourage Google to promote rich communication services into the mainstream sooner. I could probably think of more things with enough time. Story 43. Nothing significant, really. I had a hard time as a child, but that motivated me to try my hardest to get out of my small town. I struggled at university, but I made it through, and I also met my current partner. My first job was challenging at first. I considered giving up and going back to university many times, but now I have adjusted to it, and I absolutely love it. As a bonus, it pays enough for my partner and me to buy our first house. We have been together for over a decade now. My life is not perfect, but I wouldn't want to change my past. I don't know what my present would be if I had changed all the decisions I've doubted over time. Story 44. The answer to all these posts about what you would do if you could go back a few years in time is always to buy Bitcoin or Nvidia. No other answer makes sense. Story 45. I don't have an answer because I can't stop thinking about how miserable I would be. I would only be 16 if it were 10 years ago, which I do not want. After becoming a mom this year, I wonder how I would replicate my child again. There is no way I could do everything exactly the same because of my newly gained experience. I'm sure I would get over it eventually, but those first few years would be spent in deep depression. Story 46. Warn the Democratic National Committee about the danger of undermining Bernie to try to push Hillary through. Story 47. spend more time with the people I lost, making sure they knew every day how important they are to me, end a couple of toxic friendships sooner than I did. Story 48. I wouldn't change anything. I've already changed. I would simply move forward as I am and make the decisions that seem right based on my current thoughts. Everything would change, but I don't know how. It would be fun to find out, though. Story 49. Can mine be 15 years? With 15 years, we could find the cancer before it metastasizes and save my husband's life. 10 years ago, he was gone, and I am still in bed, weeping and begging God to put me out of my misery. There is no way I am going back to that. Story 50. Get on anxiety medication as soon as possible and see a neurologist and allergist. All of those things could potentially set in motion some changes I wish had been made earlier. I could have been a better parent, spouse, and an overall better person. I would feel so much better. Story 51. Immediately leave the man I was with and take my children as far away as possible. Get serious about saving money and begin focusing on self-improvement sooner. My current husband is incredible, but I wish I had taken my life more seriously and had not allowed myself to go through so much. Took a toll on both my children and me. We are in a much better place now and hindsight is clear, but that is personally what I would do. Story 52. I would wake up backpacking in Australia and try my best to follow the exact path in life I have been on, avoiding accidents and legal issues. I would buy the house that I passed up, which would have been a perfect investment. I would sell it in 2020 and then move to the countryside. I wish I could do this so much. With a few simple changes, I would have a perfect life. Story 53. Achieve better school results and join the military afterward. Secure a six-figure job and purchase a home by age 22 by the time COVID ends. Story 54. On this day 10 years ago, my sibling was dying in hospice at home. I couldn't change that, but I would have found the strength to change the aftermath. I would protect their children's social security from the surviving parent. I would have paid more attention to the paperwork my mother was juggling. I would have been more careful about isolating myself in my grief. I did my best, but if I could go back, I would have done more. Story 55. I commit fully to school, considering attending a 4-year institution or moving out. I aim to learn to cope earlier and in a healthier way. I will not settle for the first person who expresses interest in a relationship. Story 56. Get dual citizenship in Italy before they change the rules. Leave my secretly sexist then boyfriend and connect with my now husband. Buy Bitcoin and GameStop before their fluctuations. Story 57. Nothing. If I change something, there's a chance I may never meet my husband, and I don't want that to happen. He is the love of my life. Story 58. I would reach out to my grandmother. I lost contact with my biological father's side of the family and never found the courage to reconnect with her afterwards. She passed away a few years ago. It took me a long time to realize that she was the most patient and warm adult in my life. If I could go back to my childhood, I would want to spend much more time with her. It was just so calm and peaceful. Story 59. Question for this type of thought experiment. How do I organically meet the people I loved before without seeming like someone who knows too much? Story 60. I lived in a different town for 10 years, and others obviously lived in what is now my house, so there will be a lot of confusion to sort out before I consider changing anything. Story 61. I would be 17 and never date any man until I met my husband. I would invest all my money, still go to college, and finish my PhD program. I would advise my sister not to get the dog and inform my parents that the laundry room could cause a house fire. I would inform everyone about COVID. Story 62. Well, that was either 1 month before my crossbow injury or nearly a year after. If it was before, I would have immediately stopped using drugs and cut contacts with anyone who did. I wanted to save myself from getting a crossbow bolt to my head. If it was after, I honestly don't know. I had significant brain damage and struggled to remember anything, even my own name. I also couldn't function or think clearly, so it's hard to say what I would have done. I probably would have tried to make some slight alterations to see if I could have made my marriage work better. Why do you have to make me think about what could have been? I'm still trying to fully get over that marriage after she slept with my friend at the time. What a friend he was. I lost both my wife and best friend in one swift motion. Nope, I'm not getting stuck in that mindset again. Forget that. I'm better off without them. Story 63. My first thought is, where did this room come from? It wasn't here 10 years ago. Where are my friends who are supposed to be living in this house? 10 years ago, this was their house. Story 64. 10 years is a year too late. I would convince my ex to stay in university or return to university and change my degree to what I really wanted to do. Then I would encourage him to seek help for his mental health sooner. I would get a job in hospitality sooner and save more money earlier. I would find the right time to leave my ex when he is happy. I would encourage him to form friendships. By that point, he had already cheated on me but wouldn't tell me for years. I would wait for the right moment when he is in a stable place and then I would leave. I would work on a healthy friendship with him so that he would still have a true friend and I could continue to see my cat. I would then carry on as normal and aim to meet my current partner as soon as possible. I would genuinely try to be a friend and encourage him to take better care of himself. I would ask if he was okay and let him talk about himself and his feelings. I would help him prioritize himself over his ex. We would come together at a less chaotic time. I would encourage and nurture situations for my friends and family to help them improve overall. I would focus on publishing a book. I would play fewer video games, get out of bed more, and support my friends. Story 65. Well, as the first person who aged 10 years overnight, I'm sure the medical field would love to see such an anomaly. Story 66. Twist my doctor's arm and get my knee replaced early. Emotionally distance myself from people at work. Invest. Show my wife how much she means to me. Change churches. Vote according to my conscience rather than a party. Story 67. I would invest in some pharmaceutical companies knowing that COVID will happen and buy a significant amount of cryptocurrency. Story 68. I would have been almost 26 and about to move back home to be with my terminally ill father. There was nothing I could do for him at that point, even with knowledge of the future, but I would do what I did the first time and be with him as much as possible. I would make different career decisions and be much more proactive about my mental health. Story 69. All of my children are under 10, so I would likely cry as it would be mathematically impossible to create them again. Story 70. Get the divorce finalized. Don't sell the classic car for money. Buy a better house without difficult neighbors. Talk to my son more and discuss my impact on his adolescence. Get my heart issue diagnosed and addressed. Buy more dogs. Invest in Chinese companies. Encourage my parents to become more active so my mother doesn't fall. Story 71. Figure out how to save David Bowie, as I believe he was our timeline's anchor being. Also, perhaps take action regarding Trump while we still can. Story 72. Avoid the 5 years I spent in an alcoholic void. Finish college and socialize more. Invest the extra money I have. Story 73. That is a year before I had my second son. He would be very sad. The chances of getting the same wonderful goofball are very low, and trying to keep everything the same while remembering my ex-husband's affair would be a nightmare. Story 74. I call my mother and tell her that we need to have an important talk about the details of end-of-life arrangements. I will frame it as, I am an adult now and I need to get these set up, so you should show me how you did it and let me compare it to what you have drawn up. But in reality, it's me putting my foot down that she actually does it instead of assuming our relatives will act honorably. Spoiler, when money gets involved, honor goes out the window. And when you are the family outsider, there was not honor to begin with. Story 75. Maybe I could prevent a death. However, I have seen enough science fiction that teaches me that we cannot change the past. Story 76. I would have to wait a long time before doing anything fun because I would be mourning the loss of my 8-year-old daughter. Story 77. I am making a large pot of coffee because I am about to make some changes. I have wanted to redo 2015 for the past 9 years. That was when my mental health began its decline. 10 years ago this week, I had a meeting with the Ministry of Education's early intervention officer for my youngest child. I am going to refuse to take the easier path and insist they assess both of my children for autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I will also pursue my own diagnosis, which may be challenging as there was less recognition of these conditions in adult women at that time, but I will become more vocal about it. I will be walking away from the job I just started and using the knowledge I have gained to create a better plan. Additionally, I will ensure that my mother-in-law's doctor is aware that she is not taking her blood pressure medication and is at risk of having a stroke. I will be firm about my limitations in supporting her, as it could negatively impact my children. I refuse to let another agency pressure me into becoming someone else's lifeline. Unfortunately, as I become more aware of these issues, I will also need to take steps to end my marriage. This will likely mean losing the friendship that has supported our separation, as he may not understand what is about to happen. Story 78. The strangest thing is that I am in my current bed instead of my old bed in a completely different state. Story 79. Nothing. Except try to see people more often, especially if they have passed in the last 10 years. I love where I am now, and if I were to change anything, I may not get here again. Story 80. I would choose to follow my passion and remain committed this time. Initially, I pursued what my parents wanted me to do in college, but towards the end, I started to follow my passion. Unfortunately, I switched back after a friend in my desired field took his own life because he was so unhappy in that profession. Now, 5 years later, I am back pursuing a role in that field. I realized that I could have been much happier and earning double what I do now if I had made this choice earlier. Story 81. My brother died 11 years ago, and I would struggle to cope if I faced the worst time of my life again. Story 82. I'd break my son's knees so he can't get into the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps and get killed in college. He'll hate me, I'll go to jail, but he'd still be alive. Story 83. 10 years ago is when I started talking to my wife. I don't think I would change anything for fear of altering that path. Once I got her to move in with me, I might have made smarter career decisions to be in a better financial position now, knowing which sectors would be most impacted by COVID-19 and the current recession. Story 84. Gray's Sports Almanac. I won't be able to bring every match score with me, of course, but just betting on Leicester winning the Premier League and the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series right before 2016 would bring a fortune alone. Story 85. Find a way to convince Biden to run in 2016. He declined because he was mourning his son Beau, but if he had known all the chaos Trump would bring over the next 10 years, I think he would have made the sacrifice. The whole world would be different if Trump had lost. Alternatively, consider investing in Niantic and Pokemon. Story 86. I would have divorced 2 years earlier and avoided hurting my ex-spouse. I would never date again and could have prevented so much trauma. Story 87. I ended things with the girl I had been getting to know. I ignored the red flags and became a bit obsessed. We were very close for a while, practically inseparable. I wanted to be with her, but she wanted my undivided attention without seeing a relationship happening. I believe I was initially seen as her fallback choice if she couldn't find anyone better, while I struggled with being so close yet so far. We ended up sleeping together, but she only wanted me as a rebound, while I fell head over heels for her. I desired something more, but she wanted me at her beck and call, and would discard me whenever she found a new boyfriend. We drifted apart before she was ready to settle down, though she remains in my life in some unusual capacity 10 years later. I just wish I hadn't experienced all those feelings and heartache, or at the very least, that I had tried to ride the wave and not invested so much in wanting to spend my life with someone who didn't want the same. Story 88. Celebrate every day that my kids still live at home. I need to find a job outside of school, as there is no future there in the long run. I will keep a close eye on my health and address today's problems while I still can. Story 89. Breaking up with my boyfriend, dedicating more time to college, work, and family, and being smarter with my finances. Story 90. I have the strength to end my relationship with my ex-boyfriend due to his toxic behaviors instead of waiting for him to make a severe mistake. Story 91. I would go to my doctor to get diagnosed and have surgery for the spinal cord tumor that would be discovered the following year when I suddenly could not walk. Story 92. I would hug my dad and encourage him to focus on his health. I would also come out to him and the rest of my family, starting to live my life authentically. Additionally, I would embrace my niece, who would be a sweet little 4-year-old rather than the almost 14-year-old who is too cool for her age. Story 93. This situation really gets to me. I had just gone through a relationship ending and felt like I didn't spend a good portion of my 2015 as well as I could have. Additionally, I made changes I waited until 2019 and 2025 to make instead of doing them right then and there. I met my wife that year, so assuming I still have all the knowledge in this scenario, I would still look for her when I found her and ensure we went on that first date. Story 94. I would be back in the thick of my alcoholism, so that would be the first thing to change. I would also encourage my parents to get a divorce. Their marriage was over at that point, but they insisted on holding on for a few more years. Everyone would be happier and better off if they had ended it in 2015. But I would also give my parents and my grandparents a big hug. My mother and grandfather have passed away, and my father and grandmother are both dying right now. Being able to hug them all would be incredible. Then I would move out to Los Angeles and contact my current employers to see if I could get a job with them and jumpstart my career even earlier. Story 95. I would be 5.5, so I would want my parents informed of my great-grandfather's death in a year. I would tell them that my great-grandmother would get sick caring for him and then pass away. Story 96. Only the first answers are monetary gains. You're faced with a dilemma. Do you play it out with Cindy or finally ask Jennifer out? Story 97. I will ensure I have a plan to get into the University of Central Florida, pursue my degree, and continue my career as a federal agent. Story 98. I am considering switching my major from physics to computer science or economics. As much as I enjoy studying electromagnetism and quantum mechanics, the job prospects after graduation do not pay well. Story 99. Take a leave of absence from work to spend time with my mom. She will only have 7 months left to live at that point. Story 100. Install Linux on the slow family computer and convince my parents to invest in cryptocurrency. I will probably feel sad a lot because things are missing. Revisit all my old Minecraft worlds. Start writing down important things to remember. Try to inform Technoblade about his cancer before he accepts the one-on-one match against God. Story 101. The bedsheets are then put on the bed. After that, I check the house to ensure all the blinds are closed. The neighbor kids were quite inappropriate at the house we lived in 10 years ago. Story 102. I would have the opportunity to avoid a significant addiction and the subsequent problems it caused, so I would take it. Story 103. 10 years ago, I had not yet met my wife, my children did not exist, and I had only just started my career. I am now a director in my field, so I would be too devastated to change anything. Story 104. I started exercising seriously. I didn't actually begin working out until this year, and the difference is remarkable. Story 105. That would be tough. 10 years ago, I was in the midst of post-traumatic stress disorder recovery. Every day felt like the same day. Time did not pass. I didn't leave the house much because I had a tendency to get lost. If I were back then with that mental state, I wouldn't be able to change anything, though I would want to try to be less in denial so that I could progress faster. If I were back there with my much more healed current mind, I would fight to get reinstated at my college, where I had failed out for medical reasons, finish my degree just to gain closure, and then find work in the same career I am in now. That is kind of satisfying. I still ended up in the right spot despite all the struggles. Story 106, my voicemail recording. I would have it relay all the Super Bowl winners for each year between then and now. Get ready to bet everything you have on the Giants when they win again. Story 107. Make sure that my 17 to 18-year-old self avoids the mistakes I made. I need to stay on track with my college studies and secure a good job. At 27, I'm struggling to catch up with my peers. I'm finally finishing college, but I've faced setbacks in other areas as well. Story 108. Oh man, that was right before my wife got pregnant. I'd spend the day with her, having a marathon in bed. Then I would nap whenever I wanted, buy something just for myself, watch a movie that wasn't produced by Pixar, and go to my current job, applying and avoiding the whole career change due to COVID-19. Honestly, I'd probably place a bet or two. If I bought an absurd amount of Bitcoin, I might turn into someone who takes resources from those in need rather than being the idealistic billionaire we all dream of who makes the world a better place. Money has a peculiar way of corrupting even the most honest people, and I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not immune. Story 109. I am confused. Am I my younger self or am I myself now? And do I wake up where I am now or where I was then? Story 110. I get Pamela Anderson a cheese pizza and a soda, which costs $10.77, the same as my personal identification number. Oh wait, that's what I would do if it were 1,000 years ago. Story 111. I cannot say because Reddit would ban me for credible threats of violence, even though it is clearly hypothetical. Story 112. Never become friends with the individual who tried to harm me and then falsely accused me of killing her dog. She was truly unstable. Story 113. I asked my mom for help to understand my ADHD. For a long time, we never considered that I was neurodivergent because my mom didn't want anyone to stigmatize me or label me differently. I started seeking help only at the beginning of college. Part of me wishes I could have addressed these issues sooner because it is an uphill battle dealing with ADHD. I feel like I wouldn't have wasted so much of my potential. Story 114. I am pursuing the career I want instead of the one my parents chose for me. I still have 2 years left in college, so I have time before the loan payments start. Story 115. I'm confused by the question. Am I waking up in the bed and home I have now or the bed and home I had 10 years ago? Story 116. No way. 10 years ago, I was less than 2 weeks away from the worst day of my life. I don't think I can survive another go at the last decade. Story 117. Do everything possible to lower my blood pressure and cholesterol. My stroke occurred 8 years ago, and it has greatly affected my mobility. Story 118. I would visit my parents regularly and encourage them to make small changes before things get really bad. I would help my mom with her health so that she might live longer. Unfortunately, it is still too late for my dad at this point, even 10 years ago. Story 119. Start playing an instrument. On the other hand, I would be quite upset about having to go through high school all over again. Story 120. Warn the Americans to take the Phantom Menace seriously. In 2015, everyone thought the idea of him running was a bad joke. Story 121. Absolutely nothing. The good and the bad all remain the same. This is the only way I could guarantee that I would meet my wife again and be with our son. Nothing in the world would be worth risking losing them. Story 122. I would get out of bed and find my mom. I would be attached to her, honestly. Give it 5 years, and it's a wound that will never stop bleeding. Story 123. Either I avoid getting back with my ex by the end of the year because we broke up the following year, or I try to avoid what led to the breakup. This somehow makes it worse. Story 124. As little as possible in hopes I could somehow still have my 8-year-old child be the same person as they are now. Time travel hypotheticals feel different if they go before her age, like in the movie about time. Story 125. Throw out all my alcohol and never look back. I should have done it much earlier than I did. No regrets. I still won, but if I could have 10 years back, I would quit in an instant. Story 126. I would have spent more time with my mentor. I interned with her 10 years ago, and she passed away from breast cancer that year. She was in remission and appeared very strong. I believed we had more time together. Story 127. That is a complicated question. 10 years ago, the room I currently sleep in was my mother's room. Would I wake up and find her there? Also, 10 years ago, I lived 3,000 miles away. If the only difference is the calendar, I am in a difficult situation. Story 128. It would be unwise to attempt to tackle this without clarity of mind. After that, I would consider investments and stop wasting my time at a dead-end job. Story 129. Get my partner out of his difficult marriage before it causes him physical illness. He developed a stomach ulcer from stress while enduring hardships with his narcissistic wife. I am convinced that it contributed to the cancer that took him. If nothing else, it certainly became an excuse for the symptoms that might have been detected sooner without it. Story 130. The first thing I change is having plans to wake up the next morning because I don't want to experience that again. I made it through once, but I'm not going to do it again. Hard pass. I'm out. Story 131. Save money instead of wasting it. Focus on myself and not on pleasing others. I will soon be out of high school. Story 132. Who says you can change anything? Maybe all you can do is live through the same events repeatedly, watching yourself and others make the same mistakes and poor decisions you made before. That's the premise of Kurt Vonnegut's Timequake. People became so complacent, accepting that what was going to happen was fated and unavoidable, that when the loop ended, they forgot how to exercise their own free will. It fell to Kilgore Trout to tell them, "You were sick, but now you're well again, and there is work to do." Story 133. In May 2015, I was about to go abroad for a year. I wouldn't do anything different right away, just enjoy my time. But once back in the United States, I would try to get my current job straight out of college instead of wasting time. There was no real hope of changing the world, so I would focus on setting myself and my family up to weather the storm. I might also get my driver's license earlier. It's embarrassing that I waited so long. Story 134. Does everything play out the same? Because I wouldn't trade my life right now for anything. I love my child too much. Story 135. As long as I still have my daughter, I would prevent my brother-in-law from ever meeting or dating his ex, whom I believe drove him to an early grave at the age of 32. I would also try to live for another 10 years and be there on the day they found him to administer CPR. Story 136. Quit dwelling on a girl I never had a chance with and go meet my wife sooner, so I can spend more time with her in our early to mid-20s. Story 137. I would actually try. In college, relationships, money, and everything. It's like they say, life is played forward but only makes sense in reverse. Story 138. Use the next few months to maintain a better connection with my dad before he passes in October. The last time I talked to him was on Father's Day, which is normal for us. I understand that everything will happen regardless of my actions, and I can only change myself and my behavior. Story 139. For investing in Bitcoin, taking my classes a little more seriously, not dating my ex, buying a house before the price jumps, and spending the same amount of time with my grandparents if I can manage it. Story 140. Getting my wife to a cardiologist will help find the plaque buildup in her left internal carotid artery. This will prevent a stroke later on. Additionally, I want to mention Bitcoin. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.